For the last 6 months, I've been wearing two different pairs of boots exclusively, one of which is a Grantstone brass boot, and the other is an Oak Street field boot. Both of them are in these nice light tan shades, so I was trying to alternate between them, but I think the wear on these was really great, so I wanted to share what these look like today. I wanted to show you what they polish up to look like, and I also wanted to give you my thoughts on each of these. All right, let's take a look at both of these boots again after 6 months of wearing. And the first one that we're going to look at is the brass boot from Grantstone. This is in a leather from Horween called Essex, and the color is tan. Now, I was expecting these when I picked them up, because they were so light to begin with, I was expecting them to transform and become a little bit darker just with normal wear, but as you can see, the color has not changed a significant amount here. It still has that really nice light sort of orangey tan look to it. What's interesting about this leather is I've noticed in videography and photography, the color is a little bit different. The color in person very much looks like a yellowy orange. It's a very light tan. Now these have taken a tremendous beating, and very nicely so. It's really absorbed everything I've thrown at it. You can see there are some scuffs and scratches that have accumulated, but I expect as I polish this up in a minute with some Venetian shoe cream, I expect all those to get a little bit more filled in, but also I expect the luster to become much brighter. And on the Oak Street field boot here in Maryam Horse rump, and this is the natural color. If you're not familiar with the horse rump, I call it horse butt. This is the unexposed section where the shell cordovan normally is. So you get a grain layer as opposed to that dense fiber layer of the shell. It does have a very nice veg character to it also. So something I've noticed about these Oak Streets is the variance in the break of the leather. It's very different on the right boot, especially on the toe. You can see like a significant amount of delamination happening there. And it's a very coarse look. I don't love it very much, but honestly, that doesn't really bother me. This Maryam Horse rump is a very nice looking leather. I like the character in it a lot, but I don't think it's taken quite a beating in a pleasant way as the Horween Essex. And that's something that I expect from a lot of Horween leathers because it's tanned with so much stuff inside of it. They tend to wear in very differently than most leathers that I've come across. We got the same thing going on here on the Oak Streets, some scuffs and scratches all over the place. I've also noticed that the Maryam Horse butt is like a little bit more cloudy and chalky looking, as opposed to the Essex, which seems to have a little bit more of a luster to it. And again, these are the boots without any polish on them. I was trying to put polish on the first of the month on each of these. I put a little light application of Venetian shoe cream on each of them, but I stopped doing it around month 4 because I noticed that the boots started to look more like polish than the actual leather. So I stopped doing that about 2 months ago. And here's what they look like today without being polished in 2 months at all. I still think they look very nice, but I also think they can be cleaned up a bit. So before I take photos of these for the last entry of the Stitchdown Patina Thunderdome, that would be a good chance to show you how I polish them up and apply the Venetian shoe cream. And then we'll get to see what they look like after they've been all polished up and ready to go. And as I polish the boots here, I'll try to explain my experience with each of these pairs. On the Grantstone brass boots, I actually felt that they were very, very comfortable. These have a thick rubber outsole in the Vibram style, very much a lug sole on these guys, and very, very firm. I did find them to be surprisingly comfortable despite having that hard rubber outsole, and I also found the last to be quite accommodating, perhaps even too accommodating. I didn't feel like the last shape on this pair fit my foot in as pleasant of a way as the Oak Streets did. I felt like the Oak Street was a little bit more form-fitted to me, and it sort of comes across in the appearance as well. The wide nature of the Grantstone last gives it a little bit more of a bulbous appearance, where I find the Oak Street last to be like a little bit more sleek. Now for the insole, where my foot touches on the inside of the boot, I found it to be a little less shaped on the Grantstone also. I liked how the inside of the Oak Street boot, and I don't know the technical reasons for why this happens, but it feels like my foot is a little bit more hugged on the Oak Streets as opposed to the Grantstone. So I think on the comfort level, I really appreciated the comfort on the Oak Streets, where I thought the Grantstones were also comfortable, but they weren't as form-fitting as Oak Street for my foot. Now, in terms of the leather, I really like the Essex. I also really like the Maryam Horse rump. I kind of wished they got darker. That was my hope going into this. I was hoping that these would turn more of a brown shade, much darker than they are now, of course, just by wearing them, but it wasn't seeming to happen at all. And I'm not sure why that is, but I did wear these pretty hard. Again, I try to wear them and alternate just about every day. And the leather, same thing on the Maryam. I kind of wish that the color would darken up much more than it has here. And it's starting to look a little bit chalky, a little bit inconsistent between each of the boots for the Oak Street pair here. I wish it was a little bit more consistent. And I just don't think the Maryam Horse rump took as much of a beating in a pleasant way as opposed to the Essex from Horween on the Grantstone boots here. The Oak Streets also seem to be a little bit more lightweight and more of a minimalist construction. I do like how on the shaft of the Oak Street boot, there's no lining in here. It's a little bit thinner of a shaft, which I actually found to be more comfortable than on the Grantstone when there is a glove liner on the inside of the shaft of Grantstone. It's a little bit more refined appearing on Grantstone and a little bit more rugged of an appearance on Oak Street, but I did find the Oak Street to have a slight edge in terms of comfort. And the only other takeaway for me was on the hardware here. On the Grantstone, we have some speed hooks. There's 2 speed hooks. I actually found this to be much easier to lace up. And actually lacing up the Oak Streets were so tedious for me. It was just a pain in the butt for me to do. So I actually tried to change out the laces, and those didn't make any difference either. I think there's something about this one that just takes a little bit longer to unlace and then relace. Obviously, there are no speed hooks, but I was noticing that things just weren't unlacing as quickly as on the Grantstones. I'm not really certain why that is, but I did notice a significant amount of difference in the time it took to lace up each of these. So I actually ended up using the Grantstones more for that reason. I have to take my boots and shoes off when I go pick up and drop off my kid from daycare. And I just was getting really annoyed having to sit there and take off and on my shoes a couple times a day. It's just taking too much time. So I ended up leaning more towards the Grantstone and wearing them more for that reason, despite the Oak Streets being a little bit more comfortable. All right, there we have it. 2 great pairs of boots, whether you choose the Oak Street in the natural Maryam Horse rump or the Grantstone in the tan Horween Essex. Lots of words. You can't really go wrong with either. They're both very beautiful, both very well made. They've certainly held up through a tough Chicago winter here. And for some closing thoughts here, this is the first time that I've done 2 pairs of boots for the Patina Thunderdome. Actually, this is only the second Patina Thunderdome ever, so there hasn't been much opportunity to do 2 pairs. If I were to do it over again, I think I would just do 1 pair because I had a hard time trying to take just the photographs, to be honest. Every month on the first of the month, I was kind of dreading doing the content that's required to participate in the event. And that's just for me. Like, to me, sometimes that's a little bit too much and takes away from some of the fun. It's a little tedious to, like, in my personal work, I have to take photos of leather all the time. So adding to my plate of taking more photos of things, I know it sounds like I'm whining here. I just didn't enjoy the photo taking process through this run. It wasn't exciting when I had to do the 2 pairs and try to polish them up, clean them up, take great photos. I just lost interest in it. And the other big takeaway has to do with what I'm wearing on my feet right now. Okay, just took my boot off. I have a natural shell cordovan 110 last, I don't know what they call this, military boot from Viberg that has been neglected for years. And I think that's what I'm starting to feel recently. I'm kind of bummed out with the Patina Thunderdome concept just because I have all these other boots and shoes that I don't really get to wear. And it kind of bums me out to have had to walk past these for a couple of years now and not really get to wear them. So I don't know whether or not I'll be participating in the next Thunderdome. It might just not be for me, but I'd be curious. Maybe you guys can help me reframe this in my mind because it's starting to feel a little bit more like a chore for me personally. And then I don't get to wear the stuff that I already have. Again, like these, which everybody comes in and wants to steal these. And I just don't even wear them. So it feels wasteful. I'm actually been wearing these as I shot the whole video today and I'm loving these Vibergs. So it's got me excited to start wearing some other footwear now that we're done with the Thunderdome. So didn't want to end it on too much of a sour note because I did enjoy both the pairs that I wore. I'm just kind of wondering maybe the Stitchdown Patina Thunderdome, the process of doing it just might not be for me anymore. But, I'd love to hear you try to persuade me otherwise. That'd be really helpful. If you like videos about leather or boots, footwear like we just did here on the Ashland Leather YouTube channel, just huge nerds here for different leather and leather goods that make a lot of leather wallets, watch bands, and all the belts you see behind me. So subscribe to the channel if you want to see more stuff about leather. Thank you so much for checking out the Oak Street and Grantstone, my 6-month wear test for the Patina Thunderdome. Really appreciate it. Until next time, hope you guys have a good one and take care.